It all started with a gift box. Not a holiday gift, not a birthday surprise. No, this was one of those decorative wooden things, the kind couples buy when they're still pretending Pinterest has anything to do with love. It had been sitting on our bedroom dresser for years. A little latch on the front, fake antique finish. The words, "Forever Starts Here," burned into the lid in what I assume was a font called Delusional Cursive. Inside, we used to keep concert tickets, love notes, movie stubs. You know, relics of happier days, like an emotional time capsule with a delayed punchline. That Saturday morning, the air felt thick. Not metaphorically, I mean literally. Our AC had finally kicked the bucket and the humidity was doing things to my t-shirt that could qualify as performance art. I was looking for my spare watch band. Practical. Innocent. I opened the top drawer of the dresser, moved a few socks around, then glanced at the gift box. Funny thing about instincts, they whisper. They don't scream. And mine whispered, "Open it." So I did. Inside were the usual suspects. Notes folded like origami swans, a photo booth strip of her kissing my cheek like I was her personal hero, and then, beneath a faded map of a winery we never got around to visiting, something new. An envelope. It wasn't yellowed. It hadn't been there long. My name was scribbled on the front. Logan, it read. Not honey or babe or the love of my life. Just my first name. Clinical. Cold. The kind of envelope you'd expect to be handed by a lawyer in a conference room with bad lighting. I opened it. Inside was a folded sheet of paper. Handwritten. 3 sentences. I didn't mean for it to happen. I didn't want to lie. But I don't know how to fix what I broke. No signature. My first thought? She was finally confessing to leaving the oven on that night the smoke alarm went off and blamed it on the neighbor's barbecue. My second thought? Something wasn't right. The handwriting was off, shaky. Like whoever wrote it was either crying or deeply caffeinated. That's when I noticed the receipt tucked behind it. A hotel booking. 2 nights. King Suite. Name of the guest? Chase Donovan. That name might not mean much to you yet, but trust me, it will. For now, all you need to know is this. My wife never liked hotels. Said the sheets felt impersonal. Funny. I used to think her loyalty wasn't. You ever meet someone and immediately wish you hadn't? That was Chase Donovan. He worked with my wife. Senior marketing strategist, which I'm pretty sure is corporate speak for guy who owns too many turtlenecks and knows all the Keurig flavors by heart. She mentioned him a few times, always casually, like he was just a background character in her work stories. Chase said my presentation was killer today. Chase thinks I should lead the new campaign. Chase drinks his coffee black. Isn't that wild? At the time, I thought, who the hell comments on someone else's coffee preferences? But I smiled, nodded, played the supportive husband. Meanwhile, a little internal siren was quietly warming up in the background. Fast forward to the day after I found that envelope. I didn't confront her. Not yet. That's not how I operate. See, most people blow up right away, storm into the kitchen like a talk show guest and demand answers. Not me. I wanted data. I wanted certainty. So I started small. Harmless questions. Hey babe, who's covering the Anderson account now? Still Chase, she said, barely looking up from her laptop. Isn't that the guy who, ran the retreat in Scottsdale last month? She blinked. Yeah. Why? No reason. Just remembered you saying he talks too much. She gave a forced laugh, like a sitcom laugh track had just been queued up. Then she reached for her wine, second glass that night, and I caught a faint tremble in her hand. That was all the confirmation I needed. By Tuesday, I had an actual file on the guy. LinkedIn, Facebook, even his old college blog. Turns out Chase was the kind of guy who referred to himself as a sapiosexual and ended every tweet with #RiseAndGrind. I mean, if emotional infidelity had a mascot, it would be Chase Donovan in a fitted cardigan. But the nail in the coffin? A calendar invite. She left her laptop open when she went to shower, and curiosity finally beat out dignity. Calendar event. Q2 planning plus room service. Hotel Atrium. Attendees. Emily Harper, Chase Donovan. Room service. At 9 p.m. On a Thursday. Yep. Just your average Q2 planning session, held horizontal. I didn't confront her that night either. Instead, I made dinner. Her favorite, lemon pepper chicken, roasted sweet potatoes, green beans with garlic. I even lit a candle, because why not set the stage for irony? She said it was delicious. Kissed me on the cheek. And somewhere in the back of my mind, I started making a new plan. There's a difference between suspicion and proof. I had plenty of the first. The envelope, The hotel booking, the calendar invite, it all pointed in one direction, but it still lived in the land of maybe. Then came Thursday night. Emily told me she wanted to go out. Just the two of us. Said she missed us and thought a nice dinner might help us reconnect. That should have been sweet. Instead, it felt like a guy in a ski mask offering to tuck you in. I didn't trust it. Not for a second. But I agreed. She picked the place, some trendy new spot downtown with those weird Edison bulbs and an ambience that screamed Instagram me. She wore a black dress I hadn't seen in months. The one that used to be saved for anniversaries and weddings, back when we still celebrated things like that. You look beautiful, I told her as we pulled into the parking lot. Thanks, she said, barely making eye contact. You clean up pretty well yourself. I smiled, played along, because I already knew. The maitre d' greeted her by name. That was the first red flag. Then, as we followed him through the softly lit maze of tables, I noticed something else. Emily's pace slowed. She kept checking behind us like she was stalling. And then we turned the corner and bam, there he was. Chase Donovan, seated at a candlelit table like the third act villain in a bad soap opera. Tight black shirt. Rolex peeking from under the sleeve. A smirk that could curdle milk. Emily motioned to the chair across from him. Logan, this is Chase. I wanted us to all talk. I stopped walking. This is a setup? I asked, glancing from her to him and back again. You brought me here to, what, interview my replacement? Chase leaned back, real casual. I'll make this simple, Logan. You've got two options. I laughed short, bitter. You rehearsed this, didn't you? He smiled wider. Leave quietly, or face me like a man. Emily just sat there, watching, silent. I've been a lot of things in my life. Calm, logical, maybe a little too passive for my own good. But in that moment, something in me snapped, not loudly, not violently. Just a clean break. Like the quiet pop when a dislocated shoulder slips out of its socket. I sat down. That seemed to throw him off. His smirk faltered. Emily blinked like she expected fireworks and got a TED Talk. Okay, I said, folding my hands neatly on the table. So you're Chase. The office guru. The guy who thinks synergy is a personality trait. He bristled. I don't think this is productive. No, but it's entertaining, I replied. See, I came here expecting a decent meal. Maybe some honesty. Instead, I get a lecture in betrayal by PowerPoint. Let me ask you something, Chase. How long have you been sleeping with my wife? Emily gasped. Don't pretend to be shocked, Em, I said, turning to her. The hotel receipts? The hidden envelope? The calendar invite labeled room service? Real subtle. Chase leaned in. This doesn't have to get ugly. I smiled. It already is. He opened his mouth to respond, but he didn't get the chance. Because I stood up. Not with rage. Not with fury. But with that slow, terrifying calm people get right before they win something. You know what? I said, buttoning my jacket. You two deserve each other. One of you thinks charm is a currency. The other thinks loyalty's a hobby. Emily looked like she wanted to cry. Good. I turned to leave. Then I paused. Oh, I said over my shoulder. By the way, Emma, check your laptop when you get home. I made some adjustments to your files. Hope your marketing firm likes screenshots. And with that, I walked out. Into the cold, into the dark, into whatever came next. Because the thing about betrayal is it doesn't end with heartbreak. It ends with consequences. Ever stood outside in the middle of winter with no coat, just breathing in the kind of cold that turns your bones into ice sculptures? That's what that night felt like. Only I wasn't shivering. I wasn't even angry. I was clear. Like my whole brain had been rebooted in frost mode. I didn't drive home right away. Didn't have it in me. Instead, I parked by the waterfront, the spot Emily and I used to walk back when we thought holding hands could fix anything. I used to look out at that same dark water and feel peace. That night, I just watched it, wondering how many other men sat in cars like this, staring into the abyss of their dismantled lives. My phone buzzed. Emily, 9:17 p.m., you didn't have to make a scene. Emily, 9:22 p.m., we could have talked like adults. Emily, 9:31 p.m., you embarrassed yourself. No, are you okay? No, can we talk? Just a 3-text eulogy to her pride. I turned off my phone. Back at the house, it hit me the moment I stepped inside. Something was different. Not in the way things look. Everything was still where I left it. But the atmosphere had shifted. The kind of shift that happens when someone's been living a double life under your roof. The house felt haunted, like I was the ghost. Her perfume still hung in the hallway, but it wasn't just hers. There was another scent. Muskio. The kind that tries too hard. Probably Chase's cologne. Great. Now I couldn't walk past the laundry room without getting a free sample of betrayal. I walked into the bedroom. The bed was made. Perfectly. Corners tucked like a hotel room. Emily never made the bed like that. That's when it landed. This wasn't the beginning of the affair. This was the closing ceremony. That dinner? That wasn't a confession. That was a graduation ceremony for her infidelity. And I'd been handed the diploma in the form of humiliation. So I sat on the edge of the bed, hands still red from gripping that restaurant chair like a lifeline, staring at nothing. Then I opened her laptop. She'd left it on the dresser, probably too distracted by her smugness to realize I'd already copied the contents of her drive a week ago onto an external USB. Just in case. And boy, did it deliver. Let me tell you something. Cheaters love digital breadcrumbs. They're addicted to the thrill of almost getting caught. There were photos. Not the explicit kind. Emily always had too much taste for that. But it was enough. Pictures from a conference in Seattle. Her and Chase, arms around each other at a rooftop bar. Her smiling in a way she hadn't smiled at me in years. Notes in a folder called Work Trips with dates and addresses and the world's worst alibis. And the emails? Let's just say if you're going to write your side guy something called 7 Reasons I Wish I Met You First, maybe don't use your company email. I read every word. Not out of masochism. Out of precision. I needed the whole scope. I needed the full blueprint of my own demolition. You don't rebuild until you know exactly what caved in. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just organized. See, people like Emily think consequences are optional. That if they deliver the betrayal with enough poise and just the right shade of lipstick, they get to walk away clean. Not on my watch. So I started preparing. The next morning, I printed everything. Organized it into a binder. Yes, a binder. Labeled and color-coded. Because if I was going to dismantle the life she rebuilt behind my back, I was going to do it with the precision of a Swiss watchmaker. And then, I called her boss. Ever walk into a room knowing you're the villain in someone else's story and still feel like the only adult at the table? That was me the next Monday, stepping into the glassy, over-decorated foyer of Brand Access Media, where Emily and Chase both worked their marketing magic. I was dressed for war, pressed shirt, clean shave, binder in hand, and the calm smile of a man who already knew how this movie ended. The receptionist, a girl who looked barely old enough to rent a car, blinked at me when I asked to see Diane Bennett, Emily's boss. Is she expecting you? She asked. Nope, I replied, flipping open the binder and casually laying one of the photos on her desk. But she'll want to see this. 5 minutes later, I was sitting across from Diane in her corner office. Late 50s, steel gray blazer, expression like she had just bitten into a lemon and decided she kind of liked the taste. Corporate to the bone, but not unkind. She gestured at the binder. This better not be about a lawsuit. No lawsuit, I said. Not yet. Anyway. Her eyes narrowed. Then what's this about? I pushed the binder forward, flipped it open like a courtroom exhibit. This is about 2 of your top employees using your company time, your company credit card, and your client retreats to conduct their, let's say, extracurricular activities. She stared down at the first page to an email titled, Next Weekend, Chase Room 428 confirmed, winky face, and blinked slowly. Then she turned the page. More emails. Hotel receipts. Photos from that conference in Seattle where Emily was supposedly leading a workshop. She didn't speak for a long time. Finally, she looked up. Why are you bringing this to me? Because Emily's not just my wife, I said. She's your lead account manager. And I know how much your company prides itself on integrity. You feature it on your website 6 times. I counted. Her mouth twitched. A half smile, maybe. Or a tick. I'm not here to ruin lives, I added. But I am here to make sure they stop pretending they haven't been ruining mine. She leaned back in her chair, folded her hands. So what do you want, Mr. Harper? Nothing, I said. Not from you. I just wanted to make sure the truth landed in the right inbox before they tried to rewrite it themselves. And with that, I stood. Do with it what you will, I said. But you might want to check the timestamps on those hotel charges. Pretty sure one of them overlaps with a client dinner you billed as billable time. Diane didn't stand, but her eyes followed me all the way to the door. I didn't hear from Emily until 3:12 that afternoon. My phone lit up like a Christmas tree, calls, texts, voicemails. I ignored them all. Eventually, one message came through I couldn't help but read. Emily, 3:18 p.m., you into my office? What is wrong with you? You're sabotaging my career. I sat on the porch, sipping coffee, watching the neighbor's kid try to balance on his scooter. I didn't respond. A few minutes later, another message. Emily, 3:27 p.m. I could lose everything, Logan. I could lose my job. My reputation. Chase is suspended. Diane's investigating. You've made your point. I read it again. Carefully. You've made your point. That's what she thought this was a statement. A tantrum. She didn't understand that this wasn't a point. This was the beginning. That evening, she came home. Stormed into the house like a hurricane that had forgotten its key. Hair wild, mascara smudged, like the guilt had finally seeped through the surface. What the hell were you thinking? She snapped. I was thinking, I said calmly, that if you're going to spend 6 months gaslighting me, the least you can do is be transparent with your employer. You're insane, she shouted. This is my job, Logan. My future. Funny, I said, you didn't seem worried about that when you were planning sleepovers with Chase during strategy retreats. Her eyes welled. But there were no tears. Just anger. And fear. And that's when I knew I wasn't married to a person anymore. I was married to a resume. People say revenge is a dish best served cold, but honestly, I prefer mine served legally, with a paper trail, notarized, and sealed in a manila envelope. That night, after Emily's dramatic entry and Oscar-nominated performance as the wounded wife, she did what all guilty people eventually do. She tried to negotiate. Can we just talk? She asked, once she realized I wasn't going to shout or throw things. No, I was far too calm for her comfort. That's the problem with people like Emily. They expect chaos. They're allergic to poise. We are talking, I said, setting down my coffee cup. I'm just not accepting the terms you're trying to sneak in. She took a shaky breath. You ambushed me. At work. I don't know how I'm supposed to fix this if you're burning everything down. That's the difference between us, I said. You're trying to fix something that's already gone. I'm just making sure it doesn't spread to the foundation. She folded her arms. So what now? You want a divorce? I tilted my head. You really think I came this far without a plan? I've been working on the paperwork in quiet for weeks. Not because I was eager to leave, but because I was ready to move forward, with or without her. And frankly, she made that decision easy. I stood and walked to the side cabinet. Pulled out the file. It was thick. Heavy with evidence, timelines, correspondence, all of it organized down to the paper clips. This, I said, dropping the folder on the table with a dull thud, is what now looks like. She stared at it like it was radioactive. Your severance package, I added. You're unbelievable, she whispered, voice tight. No, I replied. I'm prepared. You should try it sometime. She didn't open the file. Just stood there, jaw twitching, eyes darting to the door like she might bolt. Instead, she tried the oldest play in the book. But we've built a life, she said softly, stepping closer. You really want to throw it all away? I almost laughed. Almost. We didn't build this, I said. I did. You were just the one posing for the after photos while I handled the before. Silence. And then, the dagger I'd been waiting for. Chase says I deserve better. I smiled, slow and sharp. He's right, I said. You do. And so do I. That was the last conversation we had under the same roof. By the weekend, she was gone. She didn't even take much, just some clothes, her work laptop, and, amusingly, a blender I never liked. Chase probably had a kale smoothie recipe he swore by. Perfect match. I gave her a week. 7 days to stew, panic, plot. Then I sent the email. To our friends. To her family. To mine. Subject line, setting the record straight. Inside was a calm, articulate breakdown of the situation. No venom, no drama. Just facts, time-stamped and bullet-pointed. And then I posted my own message publicly. Not on some tabloid site, not in a bitter rant. Just a simple post. After careful thought and considerable evidence, I've decided to end my marriage. Betrayal is not always loud, but the silence afterward can echo for a lifetime. I appreciate the support of those who've shown honesty through this process. It went viral, not because I wanted it to, but because people don't expect poise from a man who's been gutted. Emily texted me that night. Emily, 11:47 p.m., you had no right to go public. I didn't reply, because I wasn't interested in protecting her story anymore. I was finally telling mine. Emily lawyered up 2 days after I posted the update, which was cute. She went with a firm that had a waterfall on their homepage and promised to protect what matters most. I guess that meant her yoga mats and Chase's feelings. Mine? I hired the guy who doesn't advertise. The one whose office looks like a 1980s accounting firm. No Instagram presence, no TikTok tips. Just decades of quiet, devastating efficiency. Tell me what you want, he said. Clean break, I replied. And the truth on record. And we got it. Turns out, Chase had a reputation for being a little too charismatic at work functions. HR had a folder on him. Diane, the boss I met with, added Emily's little romance novella to the stack. By the time my lawyer sent over our proposed settlement, her firm was already encouraging her to accept quietly and leave before Q4. We offered her the house. I didn't want it anymore. Let her have the big kitchen and the quiet guilt of eating breakfast alone every morning where she once told me I was her everything. I took the investment accounts. The car. The lake cabin. She forgot it was in my name only. I'd renovated it myself over 3 summers while she was finding herself at fitness retreats. Fitting. She didn't find loyalty. She accepted the terms. But Chase? He got fired. Apparently, fraternizing during company time with multiple employees wasn't a team-building strategy the board endorsed. Last I heard, he was exploring new opportunities. Probably on his couch, watching inspirational videos on YouTube between rejection emails. Post-divorce life was quiet. At first, there's this weird silence that follows betrayal, like the static after a blown speaker. But eventually, that silence turns into clarity. And I filled it with things I'd neglected. Mountain biking. Real weekends. Actual friends who weren't shared through couples dinners. I even started taking photos again, something I used to love but shelved when life became more about pretending than living. One afternoon, I ran into Emily's cousin at a coffee shop. She gave me that pity look people try to pass off as sympathy. I just want you to know, she really does regret it, she said. I sipped my espresso. No, she regrets getting caught. And losing status. If she regretted it, she would have stopped before I had to read it in email threads labeled SeattleFire2.pdf. The cousin blinked, clearly unsure how to respond. I smiled. Tell her I'm doing great. Because I was. Better than great. I wasn't healed. I hate that word. I was sharpened. Wiser. No longer volunteering for a role in someone else's fiction. 3 months after the papers were finalized, I got an envelope. A wedding invitation. Guess who? Yup, Emily and Chase. Now, it takes a special kind of ego to invite your ex-husband to the ceremony you built on the ashes of his life, but Emily always had that brand of boldness. It was handwritten. She even included a +1 line. I RSVP'd. Attending. But I didn't go alone. My +1? The truth. See, I'd had a little project on the side. I built a website, nothing fancy. Just a clean little page with a simple header, Chronicles of a Corporate Romance. It featured a very straightforward timeline. No libel. No accusations. Just screenshots, photos, and receipts, digitally redacted to protect the innocent and leave the guilty in HD. I bought the domain, printed it on a tiny card, and taped that card inside their wedding gift, a framed photo of the last vacation Emily and I took. Smiles frozen in time. A picture that would haunt her like a ghost in high heels. On the back of the frame? The URL. Happy honeymoon. The revenge wasn't cruel. It wasn't violent. It was methodical, tasteful, and unignorable. My name didn't trend. No drama. Just clarity delivered to the exact doorstep where it was once denied. A year later, I was living in the cabin full-time, running a small consultancy from my laptop, and spending mornings drinking coffee on a deck I built with my own 2 hands. No lies. No Chase. No Emily. Just peace, and the sound of truth echoing softly in a house that finally had nothing to hide. Sometimes people ask if I'd take her back if she showed up on that deck with tears in her eyes. And I always say the same thing. No. But I'd hand her a broom. Because when you break something, the least you can do is sweep.